The millionaire introduced the mistress at a charity dinner. Pregnant wife arrived in a designer gown, a night of glittering chandeliers, champagne flutes, and the city's wealthiest patrons in designer finery. Promised to be a simple charity gala, but nothing was further from the truth. When Maxwell Harrington, an illustrious millionaire known for his staggering philanthropic donations, arrived with a mysterious woman on his arm, the room filled with whispers and suspicious glances. Rumors swirled. Who was she? Where was his pregnant wife, the famously elegant Veronica Harrington? No one could imagine how quickly the evening would descend into scandal. As the stage lights illuminated Maxwell's triumphant grin, a hush fell over the audience, and the real drama was only about to begin. Maxwell Harrington was a name that commanded respect in every elite social circle. He was on the board of several charities, a proud alumnus of Stanford University, and often invited to closed-door business conferences with the likes of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. His public persona was that of a modern Renaissance man, charismatic, engaging, and always ready to fund a worthy cause. Whispers of his less savory exploits had flitted through corridors of power before, but they were always overshadowed by Maxwell's magnanimous acts of goodwill. Veronica, his beloved wife, was pregnant with their first child, and as far as anyone knew, they had a picture-perfect marriage. This year's extravagant charity dinner, organized by the Harrington Family Foundation, promised an evening of refined splendor and enormous donations for children's education. Yet behind the pleasantries, Maxwell was about to introduce someone who would completely upend his carefully constructed life. The grand ballroom of the Platinum Crown Hotel shone with an otherworldly brilliance. Immense crystal chandeliers dangled overhead like celestial bodies, casting refracted light across the marble floors. Laughter and polite conversation danced through the crowd as elegantly dressed benefactors gathered to show off both their generosity and their wardrobes. Long tables, adorned with fresh orchids, hosted delicacies flown in from around the world: beluga caviar, Japanese Kobe beef, and French macarons in dazzling pastel hues. The opulence was nearly overwhelming, setting the stage for a night that was bound to make headlines. Maxwell had spared no expense. After all, he was known for extravagance, and this event needed to outdo every preceding year. Veronica Harrington, typically the radiant star of such affairs, had been absent from the earlier part of the evening. The official reason: she was dealing with a lingering bout of morning sickness, hardly surprising at 6 months pregnant. In truth, Veronica had felt uneasy about attending a massive event, with her pregnancy showing more prominently. She feared the stares, the pitying glances from well-wishers, and, most of all, the potential for an unsettling revelation. For weeks, she had harbored a gnawing suspicion that something was off in her marriage. Maxwell's late-night meetings and hushed phone calls stoked her anxiety. Little did she know her entrance would ignite a spark that would set the night ablaze. In the hotel suite on the 23rd floor, Maxwell straightened the bow tie of his expensive Armani tuxedo. Across from him stood a stunning woman named Lena Moretti, her caramel hair cascading in luxurious waves over her bare shoulders. The vibrant crimson gown she wore clung to her figure, exuding an undeniable aura of confidence and allure. Tonight, Maxwell was determined to introduce Lena as a significant presence in his life, though the depth of their relationship was not something he divulged too transparently. He rationalized it as a progressive move. Lena was an influential figure herself, an art gallery owner from Florence, Italy, with connections to some of Europe's most esteemed collectors. That was the official story he planned to tell. But the real truth was known only to them. For more than a year, they had been sharing clandestine weekends in exotic locales, expensive dinners in hidden corners of the city, and a bond that was thicker than infatuation. The pregnancy of his wife had weighed heavily on Maxwell, though not in the way many might assume. Instead of bringing him closer to Veronica, it had driven him farther away. And tonight, that distance would become heartbreakingly clear. Standing at the top of the grand staircase leading into the ballroom, Maxwell felt Lena's hand slip into his. He caught his reflection in a mirrored panel, a portrait of elegance and confidence. If only his father, the late Robert Harrington, could see him now carrying forward the family legacy of philanthropy on one hand and entertaining a scandalous liaison on the other. The irony didn't escape him. It fueled his adrenaline. Gazing at the assembled guests, he spotted a few familiar faces. Jack Milburn, a media tycoon who had come with his entire editorial team, likely to capture exclusive coverage. To the side, seated with delicate posture, was Harper Sinclair, the face of Sinclair Diamonds, and rumored to be engaged in a quiet philanthropic race with Maxwell. The presence of these high-profile individuals further galvanized his resolve. He wanted to show them that he was not only a formidable businessman, but also a man comfortable living on the edge of social norms. Downstairs, an anxious hush had begun to ripple through the crowd as people awaited the entrance of the event's illustrious host. There were murmurs. Where was Veronica? Why had Maxwell not arrived earlier to greet the many VIPs? What changes to the schedule were behind this tardiness? The Harrington staff, dressed impeccably in black uniforms, moved through the sea of guests with precision, offering champagne and canapes. Each time they passed a cluster of onlookers, queries popped up about Maxwell's whereabouts. In a corner, discussing art sponsorships, was the ever-dignified Lady Yvonne Blackwell, rumored to be one of the biggest donors of the night. She fidgeted with her diamond bracelet, a sign of impatience. She had contributed a hefty sum to the cause and expected the courtesy of a greeting from the host himself. The tension of waiting only made the upcoming spectacle even more potent. Suddenly, an audible stir signaled Maxwell's appearance at the head of the sweeping marble staircase. Cameras flashed. The crowd instinctively turned toward him, relieved and thrilled to finally see the man of the hour. However, the sight of the elegant woman on his arm set a wave of whispered speculation loose. No one recognized her immediately, though her poise radiated a star-like confidence. It was not uncommon for Maxwell to introduce potential investors or philanthropic partners at such events, but the intimacy between them seemed different. The hush was palpable. As Maxwell descended the steps, he flashed a brilliantly practiced smile. "Welcome, everyone," he called out, letting his voice echo over the hush. "Thank you all for supporting the Harrington Family Foundation tonight." He then guided Lena forward, hand still held in his. "I'd like you to meet a dear friend of mine, Lena Moretti. She's recently partnered with one of our overseas arts programs. Please make her feel at home." The crowd responded with polite applause, but curiosity lingered like a stubborn fog. Even Maxwell's usual acquaintances seemed perplexed by his affable introduction. He rarely introduced a partner with such personal warmth. Standing next to him, Lena exuded a dignified ease, greeting people with an outstretched hand and polite words. From a distance, one could almost see her calculating each movement, each smile, each nod, careful to imprint a memorable first impression. Cameras snapped incessantly, capturing the pair in elegant poses. Jack Milburn, the media mogul, wasted no time whispering instructions to his photographers. Close-ups, wide shots, every angle possible. The real gold, however, would be to discover the truth behind that slight flush on Maxwell's cheeks and the stolen glances he exchanged with Lena. While Maxwell made the initial round of greetings, Veronica Harrington was back at the Harrington penthouse, meticulously applying the final touches to her ensemble. A personal stylist and makeup artist had prepared her hair into a graceful chignon, leaving gentle curls framing her face. The designer gown, a shimmering midnight blue piece from Elie Saab, cradled her baby bump elegantly. Veronica's petite figure had always been admired, and despite the pregnancy, she remained breathtakingly poised. With each brush of mascara, each pin in her hair, she reflected on the discomfort in her gut. She had decided to make a late entrance tonight, partly to conserve her energy, but mostly because something felt amiss. She was fiercely private and had never shared her suspicions with anyone, not even her closest friend, Cecilia Davenport. Yet a phone call she had intercepted a week ago, a snippet of conversation between Maxwell and an unknown woman, played in her mind repeatedly. Though she had no concrete proof of infidelity, something about Maxwell's voice had felt off, too gentle, too affectionate. Clutching a small, beaded purse, Veronica took a last moment to gaze at herself in the mirror. She practiced a calm smile, the one her finishing school instructor had taught her years ago. Then, with a gentle rub on her stomach, an unconscious gesture of maternal protectiveness, she stepped out of the penthouse. In the lobby, her driver, Bernard, waited with the black limousine that would ferry her to the Platinum Crown Hotel. Bernard seemed to sense his mistress's nerves. "Everything all right, Miss S. Harrington?" he asked kindly, holding the door open for her. Veronica offered a polite nod. "Yes, Bernard, let's get to the gala. The children are counting on us, after all." She tried to sound earnest, but her voice wavered. Back at the gala, the program was underway. Speeches lauded the various humanitarian efforts funded by the Harrington Family Foundation, educational grants, technological advancements in rural schools, and arts programs for underprivileged youth. Notable guests like Oprah Winfrey had recorded congratulatory messages praising Maxwell's ongoing commitment. Lena found herself introduced to more and more influential figures, from the city's mayor to ambassadors of foreign countries. She handled each introduction with a refined grace, offering just enough personal detail to pique interest, but staying vague enough to maintain an aura of mystery. Maxwell basked in the glow of attention, feeling an odd mix of triumph and adrenaline. He relished in the risk of bringing Lena out in the open, publicly weaving her into the narrative of his philanthropic world. In a way, it felt like a bold statement of his independence, as though he was proving that he answered to no one's expectations, not even those of his pregnant wife. However, beneath Lena's poised exterior, her heart hammered like a caged bird. She was fully aware of the precarious situation she was stepping into. Maxwell had assured her that his marriage was nothing more than a formal arrangement carried on out of obligation. Yet the bright diamond ring still glimmering on his finger told another story. She scanned the crowd, catching glimpses of skepticism and curiosity in the eyes of onlookers. Did they already suspect something amiss? She knew that one slip of the tongue or one miscalculated stare could set off a scandal that would echo through high society for weeks, if not months. Amid the swirl of introductions, Lena found herself longing for a moment of respite. She excused herself politely and made her way to a side corridor adorned with framed photographs of previous galas. Taking a deep breath, she tried to steady her nerves, but as footsteps approached, her heart soared into her throat, and she turned quickly to see who was coming. It was none other than Harper Sinclair, the society maven and Maxwell's on-again, off-again rival in the philanthropic arena. Harper was known for her fierce sense of competition and her meticulous gossip networking. She offered a courteous smile, but her eyes sparkled with a cat-like curiosity. "Miss Moretti," she began softly, "I must say you've made quite an entrance tonight." Lena forced a polite laugh. "A bit overwhelming, yes, but thrilling to be part of such a noble cause." "That's wonderful," Harper continued, playing with the large diamond necklace resting on her collarbone. "I'd love to know more about your work in the arts, and how you met Maxwell, of course. One rarely sees him with such captivating company that isn't Miss S. Harrington." Lena steeled her expression. Maxwell and I met through a friend in the European art scene. He expressed interest in supporting an art scholarship. It's still in the works, but we're optimistic about its launch. Harper's lips curled into a sly smile. How very interesting. Maxwell keeps quite busy, doesn't he? She let the question hover, as though fishing for more. Lena didn't take the bait. Across the ballroom, Maxwell had become locked in conversation with Jack Milburn, who was prodding him for an exclusive interview. Jack was on the verge of launching a new digital platform, and a public statement from Maxwell would do wonders for his brand. Maxwell, however, had his mind elsewhere. He discreetly glanced toward the corridor where Lena had disappeared. He wondered if she was faring well among the city's sharpest tongues and keenest eyes. Jack caught the direction of Maxwell's gaze. "Looking for someone?" he asked with a raised brow. Maxwell cleared his throat. "Just ensuring everyone is enjoying themselves. Always something to check at a function like this." "Right," Jack responded. "Well, I won't keep you, but do consider giving me a few quotes tonight. A philanthropic piece with a personal angle. Our readers are fascinated by your, let's say, bold approach to life." Maxwell managed a half smile. "I'll think about it, Jack." In that fleeting moment, Maxwell's phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out discreetly, anticipating a message from a colleague or an event planner. Instead, it displayed a single notification: "Veronica Harrington on my way." His pulse quickened. He'd conveniently neglected to tell Veronica that he would be introducing Lena publicly tonight. Of course, he hadn't anticipated Veronica would stay home forever, but he had hoped her late arrival would allow him ample time to weave a narrative that made Lena's presence seem innocuous. Now, the stakes rose considerably. With Veronica en route, the next part of his plan needed to unfold flawlessly, or he risked catastrophe. Veronica's limousine glided down the city's bustling streets. Through the tinted window, she observed the neon lights reflecting off the glass skyscrapers. A sense of foreboding churned in her stomach, overshadowing the mild nausea that came with her pregnancy. She clutched her phone, noticing an influx of social media notifications. Though she wasn't typically one for online drama, she recognized some of her society acquaintances' names in group chats. Curiosity nudged her to open a conversation thread. What she saw unsettled her. Multiple guests at the gala were posting cryptic messages about Maxwell's surprise guest, some including blurred snapshots of a woman in red at his side. Immediately, Veronica felt her world tilt. Could this be an innocent business acquaintance, a new philanthropic partner, or was this the confirmation of the betrayal she had long suspected? Determined to maintain composure, Veronica locked her phone and closed her eyes. She pictured the cause behind the evening children who would benefit from the funds raised. She reminded herself of the promise she had made to continue supporting their foundation, come what may. But as the limousine neared the Platinum Crown Hotel, her anxieties returned like uninvited specters. She unconsciously tightened her grip on her purse until her knuckles whitened. Bernard's voice cut through her thoughts. "We're here, Mrs. Harrington." She opened her eyes to see the gold-lit marquee of the hotel and the throng of reporters stationed outside, cameras at the ready. This was not the discreet entrance she had hoped for. Tonight, all eyes would indeed be on her. As soon as Veronica stepped out of the limousine, the paparazzi erupted in a frenzy of flashes and shouted questions. "Mrs. Harrington, how are you feeling? Is Maxwell inside? Any comment on your baby's due date?" She offered a brittle smile and kept walking, the doorman swiftly opening the entrance. Her unborn child seemed to stir within her, as if sensing the tension in the air. Inside the lobby, she paused briefly to steady her breathing. The staff, all of whom recognized her, rushed forward with concerned smiles. "So pleased you could make it, Mrs. Harrington," said one of the managers, gesturing toward the corridor leading to the ballroom. She nodded politely. "Of course. This is an important night for us all. But her eyes mirrored the apprehension she felt. Every step she took toward the ballroom was a step closer to an inevitable collision with a truth she could no longer deny. Maxwell spotted Veronica the moment she entered the room. Her entrance was as striking as ever, regal, poised, and heartbreakingly beautiful in her designer gown. A hush seemed to ripple through the vicinity where she stood, and for a split second, Maxwell felt an uncomfortable clench in his stomach. The evening's tension escalated to a razor's edge. If he handled this poorly, everything he had built, his philanthropic reputation, his social standing, and possibly even his future with Veronica, could be irreversibly damaged. Yet, part of him still believed he could maneuver the situation to his advantage. Maybe he could introduce Lena as merely a colleague, quell any rising suspicions, and push scandal away. Carefully, he made his way across the room, offering polite nods to guests who tried to intercept him for conversation. Approaching Veronica, he plastered on a warm smile. "Darling," he greeted, leaning in for a kiss on her cheek. She accepted it, but the tension in her posture was unmistakable. "Maxwell," she said quietly, searching his eyes for a hint of truth or remorse. "I apologize for the delay. I see the event is already in full swing." "It's going wonderfully," Maxwell replied, his voice just a little too bright. He gestured towards the crowd. "We've already raised an astounding sum. The Children's Scholarship Fund is going to make a real difference." Veronica nodded stiffly, glancing around. She noted the expressions of onlookers, some simply curious, others almost pitying. Her gaze returned to Maxwell. "The first see you've introduced a new partner." She tried to make her tone light, but her words came out clipped, betraying her fears. Maxwell swallowed. "Yes, Lena Moretti. She's from Florence, an art connoisseur. We're discussing an international collaboration to fund art education programs. I'd like you to meet her." Veronica took a breath. "By all means." Across the room, Lena had rejoined Harper Sinclair, who was now regaling her with tales of Maxwell's previous philanthropic triumphs, subtle barbs included. The very mention of Veronica's name seemed to linger in every corner of the conversation. Lena stiffened when she spotted Maxwell guiding a statuesque pregnant woman through the throng. The woman's gaze flickered over to her, unreadable yet intense. Instinctively, Lena straightened her spine and prepared for a confrontation, uncertain how much of Maxwell's explanation about marital arrangements had been entirely truthful. An excruciatingly polite smile curved across Lena's lips. She stepped forward, hand extended. "Mrs. Harrington, a pleasure. I've heard so many wonderful things about you." Veronica accepted the handshake, her eyes flicking over Lena's immaculate makeup, her perfectly styled hair, and the red dress that, ironically, matched the floral arrangements chosen for the evening. "Likewise," Veronica replied. "Maxwell has mentioned that you're quite passionate about art education." There was a taut silence, broken only by the subdued chatter of other guests. Maxwell intervened, his voice pitched in a faux cheerful register. "Lena's gallery in Florence has hosted exhibitions for emerging talents from around the world. She's hoping to extend those opportunities to students in underserved communities." Veronica, still holding Lena's gaze, responded, "That's quite admirable, especially if it helps children find a creative outlet." She then turned to Maxwell, an edge in her voice. "It's wonderful to see you expanding our philanthropic interests in new directions, darling." Internally, Veronica's heart was pounding. Every fiber of her being sensed the emotional undercurrent between Maxwell and Lena, an attraction that felt too palpable to ignore. Yet, for the sake of appearances, she continued to smile. In the reflection of a polished silver centerpiece, she saw her own forced composure. She loathed this facade, but revealing her anguish in front of 100 onlookers would only amplify the public spectacle. The floor manager of the event approached them with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Harrington, Mrs. Harrington, Miss Moretti, we're about to commence the live auction. We'd be honored if you'd all take your seats near the stage. Mr. Harrington, I believe you're giving a short introduction before the bidding starts." With a relieved nod, Maxwell guided both women to the front row of tables. Veronica settled on one side, Lena on the other, with Maxwell in between, like a precarious bridge between two worlds. The irony wasn't lost on the watchful eyes scattered among the crowd. Photographers lined the back wall, snapping pictures that would grace society pages by dawn. On stage, a polished auctioneer tested the microphone. A hush descended on the ballroom. Painted canvases, rare antiques, and exotic vacation packages were lined up for auction to further bolster the foundation's fundraising goals. Maxwell took to the podium, gathering his composure. "Good evening once again," he began, his voice resonating through the speakers. "I want to express my gratitude for your tremendous support. Together, we're changing the lives of children who might otherwise never have a shot at quality education. Your contributions tonight, big or small, will leave a lasting impact on future generations. Now, let's enjoy this auction and open our hearts to giving generously." Applause thundered across the ballroom. The first few items went up for bidding with lively engagement from the crowd. A hand-woven Persian rug fetched a remarkable sum, followed by a rare vintage wine collection. As the night progressed, the tension between Veronica, Maxwell, and Lena seemed overshadowed by the competitive fervor of the bidding war. For a moment, Maxwell sighed in relief, believing that perhaps they could navigate this night without a catastrophic reveal. However, the calm was only superficial. Veronica found her mind whirling. Each time Maxwell whispered something to Lena, a quiet comment or an explanation about an auction item, Veronica felt an invisible knife twist in her stomach. The few times he spoke to her directly, he maintained that same breezy, confident facade he used for business negotiations. Their marriage had never felt more transactional. Midway through the auction, an unexpected item was brought forward, a set of paintings created by children from one of the Foundation's pilot schools in rural Texas. The artistry was raw but touching, depicting small-town life with bright colors and untutored strokes. The auctioneer introduced the set. "Ladies and gentlemen, these paintings symbolize the heart of our mission. They show the talent and passion these children hold within, waiting for the right resources to flourish." Maxwell stood once again to speak, brimming with pride over his philanthropic achievements. Meanwhile, Veronica looked down at her baby bump, feeling a surge of protectiveness. This was the future they were shaping. She reminded herself children's futures, including her own child's. A wave of emotion threatened to break her composure. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Lena dabbing a tear. Perhaps it was genuine emotion or merely a practiced display. Regardless, it felt like a betrayal. How dare this other woman shed tears for the cause Veronica held so dearly, all while entangling herself with Veronica's husband. After the children's paintings were auctioned off at an astonishingly high price, thanks to a bidding war between Harper Sinclair and Lady Yvonne Blackwell, the event coordinator announced a short intermission. Guests dispersed to chat, stretch their legs, and refresh their drinks. Maxwell had to oversee a few behind-the-scenes logistics, leaving Veronica and Lena momentarily at the same table. Silence hung between them like a charged cloud. Eventually, Veronica spoke first, her voice low. "You must be very close to Maxwell to make such an entrance tonight." Lena hesitated, reading Veronica's eyes, searching for hostility or invitation. "We've been collaborating on several projects," she said carefully. "He values my perspective on art-related philanthropy." Veronica allowed herself a mirthless smile. "He does tend to value new perspectives, especially those that challenge boundaries." She paused, her gaze flicking to Lena's ringless hand. "Just be careful. Maxwell always has a bigger plan in mind than what he reveals." Lena swallowed, uncertain of how to respond. Was Veronica threatening her, warning her, or empathizing with her? The emotional spectrum in that subtle conversation felt enormous. Before either could say more, a well-dressed socialite ambushed them with compliments on their gowns, steering the conversation into shallow waters. Meanwhile, Maxwell was cornered by Jack Milburn near the bar. "Max, it seems you've done it again," Jack said, swirling a glass of brandy. "Another grand event, and of course, the talk of the evening is your new partner." He nodded toward Lena, who sat stiffly at the table. Maxwell stiffened. "As I said, she's a benefactor and a partner in the Arts Initiative. There's nothing more to it, Jack." Jack's grin was as sharp as a knife. Of course. But you might want to be careful. Society's eyes are on you. Rumors can overshadow good intentions if they're juicy enough. And trust me, that woman in red is fueling some of the juiciest gossip I've heard in a while. Maxwell forced a laugh. "That's the media for you." But inside, a current of dread pushed him toward panic. The last thing he needed was a media magnate stoking the flames of scandal. If Jack ran a sensational piece connecting him to an affair, the philanthropic community might turn on him. And Veronica, she could finally decide to leave. Or worse, take legal action that would tarnish the Harrington name forever. When the intermission ended, the final part of the auction resumed. Tension now lined every exchange between Maxwell, Veronica, and Lena. Each charitable pledge became a backdrop to a swirling undertow of suspicion and guarded civility. The highlight of the evening was a limited edition sculpture from a renowned contemporary artist, rumored to be worth a small fortune. Bidding escalated quickly, with Harper Sinclair once again challenging Lady Yvonne. Amid the high-stakes competition, Maxwell glanced at his wife. Her face was composed, but her eyes were distant, as though she was already a million miles away. He felt a pang of guilt. This was supposed to be a night of triumph for their foundation, a celebration of the child they were soon expecting. Instead, he had invited chaos by bringing Lena so visibly into the picture. Meanwhile, Lena sensed the swirling tension growing intolerable. Though she had craved legitimacy in Maxwell's life, she had not anticipated the shame that would settle over her at being introduced in this manner. She stole glances at Veronica's graceful demeanor, feeling pangs of remorse for the pain she was certainly causing. Finally, the auction concluded with record-breaking donations. The auctioneer thanked everyone, and the band struck up a lively tune to transition into the more festive part of the evening. Waiters glided around, refilling champagne flutes. The guests, flush with the excitement of generous giving, chattered about the success of the night. Maxwell breathed a sigh of relief, though he knew the hardest part was still to come, managing the aftermath. He excused himself from a conversation and sought out Veronica, finding her conversing with a group of dignitaries near the stage. He gently touched her elbow. "Veronica, do you have a moment?" he asked softly. She nodded, and they stepped into a quieter corner near an elaborate floral display. Her face was resolute, her eyes betraying the heartbreak she was fighting to contain. Maxwell cleared his throat. "I want to apologize if tonight has been stressful for you, with your pregnancy and everything. I didn't mean for it to be overwhelming." Veronica stared at him, letting a heartbeat pass. "Who is she really, Maxwell?" Her voice was calm, but tinged with an unmistakable tremor. "I deserve at least that much honesty." Maxwell glanced around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "Veronica, she's a business associate, yes, but also a friend." He stumbled over the last word. "I wanted to bring her into the fold of our work. She has resources, connections. She can help us expand internationally." Veronica held up a hand to silence him. "I'm not a fool. I've seen the way you look at her, and I know that pregnant or not, my place in your life has been overshadowed." Her voice quivered. "This is not how I envisioned building our family." He attempted to reach for her hand, but she drew it back. "Veronica, It's complicated. I never wanted you to be hurt. Things changed. We changed. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she held them back. Is she worth it? Ruining everything we've built, risking our child's stable home? Maxwell's breath caught in his throat, unsure how to respond. The truth was that even he didn't fully comprehend his motivations. Was it lust, excitement, the allure of something new? Or had the unstoppable busyness of their life driven a wedge so deep it felt beyond repair? Veronica pressed her lips together, an internal war evident on her face. I'll stay for the rest of the evening, for the foundation's sake, but we will really talk once this night is over. She was about to leave him standing there, but paused, looking momentarily fragile. You should know, Maxwell, I can handle a lot of things, but I won't be humiliated. Those words hung in the air long after Veronica had walked away. Maxwell felt a knot form in his stomach, an impending sense of doom. In a swirl of partygoers, he locked eyes with Lena, who stood by the bar, swirling a glass of mineral water. She offered a wan smile, as though she could sense everything that was unraveling around them. The celebratory portion of the gala was now in full swing. Soft jazz played in the background as couples danced. Clinking glasses resonated against polished cutlery, and the fragrance of vanilla-scented candles wreathed the room. Veronica mingled with donors, adopting a facade of graciousness while her inner turmoil raged. Maxwell, too, engaged in small talk with influential figures, each conversation feeling more hollow than the last. Lena found herself adrift, uncertain whether to approach Maxwell or keep her distance. She noticed how carefully Veronica navigated the room, like a queen, regally acknowledging each person who spoke to her. Yet, behind Veronica's polite demeanor lay an unspoken heartbreak. Lena tasted the bitterness of her role in that. She had become the other woman, publicly inserted into a once celebrated marriage. Navigating toward the silent hallway again, Lena tried to get a moment to collect her thoughts. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through social media. Her feed was lighting up with posts from the event. Though no one had blatantly stated her connection to Maxwell, the innuendos were rife. She swallowed a lump in her throat, realizing that she might soon be the center of a scandal bigger than she had anticipated. Outside, a light drizzle had begun, pattering on the hotel's ornate windows. Veronica slipped away from the ballroom, needing a breath of fresh air. She found herself on a small balcony that overlooked the dazzling cityscape. The distant hum of traffic was oddly soothing after the emotional cacophony inside. Leaning against the balustrade, she let her hand rest on her baby bump, feeling a gentle kick. The reality of her situation pressed in. She was pregnant, potentially with a husband who might be stepping out of their marriage. Could she raise this child alone? Did she want to? Soft footsteps approached. She turned to see Lena. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, neither spoke. The quiet tension of the night now crystallized in this intimate setting. Lena broke the silence first, voice trembling. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. I just needed some air. Veronica squared her shoulders. Then take it. There's enough air for both of us. They stood side by side, facing the city lights that sparkled like distant galaxies. After several heartbeats, Lena spoke again. Her words weighted with guilt. I never wanted to cause you pain. Maxwell led me to believe your marriage was complicated, that I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes. Veronica scoffed. Is that how he framed it? She closed her eyes briefly, collecting herself. Whether it's complicated or not, he's still my husband and the father of my child. That's not something to be taken lightly. Lena bowed her head. I know. She hesitated, searching for the right words. I fell in love with the man he showed me, the one who was passionate about art, who wanted to see the world through a different lens. I didn't think, or maybe I didn't want to think about what it would mean for you. Veronica's voice cracked. It's not just me. It's our child. a child who will one day read about what happened tonight. Or worse, sense the tension in our home if we pretend nothing's wrong. A faint rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. Both women stood on the balcony, the breeze tugging at their gowns. Two women, bound by the love of the same man, silently judged their next move. Lena finally summoned the courage to look Veronica in the eyes. "I didn't come here intending to force a confrontation. Honestly, I believed he would handle this with more grace. But seeing you, meeting you, it's impossible not to understand the depth of what you share. And I'm starting to realize that I might have been living in a dream or a fantasy where he was free." Veronica's lip quivered. "Maybe we both have. I believed he would be faithful, that our child would be born into a stable marriage. That was my dream. And yet, here we are." Both women paused, feeling the weight of truths left unsaid. Another hush fell over them, and in the distance, the music from the ballroom carried on, oblivious to the quiet heartbreak unfolding on the balcony. A flash of lightning sliced through the sky, followed by a more resonant clap of thunder. The drizzle turned heavier, and droplets started falling on their outstretched arms. Veronica stepped away from the balustrade, glancing at Lena. For a moment they shared a somber understanding that transcended jealousy or blame. "We should go back inside," Veronica said softly. They re-entered the hotel's corridor, their gowns slightly damp at the edges. The light and warmth of the ballroom beckoned, but stepping back into that environment felt like returning to a stage for the final act of a tragic play. Veronica closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. She braced herself. "I need to talk to Maxwell, alone." Lena nodded. She could see the determination etched into Veronica's features and recognized that any further interference might only worsen the situation. Inside the ballroom, Maxwell spoke to a group of potential donors, his face lit up with the easy charm that won people over so effortlessly. Yet the moment he spotted Veronica approaching, he knew the time for pleasantries was over. She was resolute, and he felt a chill run through him. He excused himself and followed her discreetly to a corner near the swirling pastel draperies. Veronica's eyes were not filled with tears, but with a cold sense of finality. "Maxwell," she began, struggling to keep her voice calm, "I want you to listen very carefully. I will not play the part of the dutiful wife while you parade another woman around. I deserve better. Our child deserves better." Maxwell nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, you do. And I know I've made this whole situation complicated." "Complicated," she repeated, almost laughing at the understatement. She took a breath, pressing a hand gently against her stomach. "I will not cause a scene tonight because of our foundation and the children we are here to help. But after this event, we need to have a serious conversation about whether our marriage can be salvaged or not." Maxwell's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. His shoulders slumped slightly as he weighed the gravity of her words. "I understand," he said. "I'm sorry that I didn't handle things the right way. I never meant to hurt you." Veronica forced a small, sad smile. "Sometimes I think you never meant to be honest with me either." She stepped away, leaving Maxwell to wrestle with his own conscience. Meanwhile, across the room, Lena watched them from a distance. She noted Maxwell's defeated posture and Veronica's dignified exit. A pang of empathy stabbed at her. She wondered if, by pursuing her own happiness, she had violated a bond that deserved more respect. But what was done could not be undone. The last official speech of the night was delivered by Lady Yvonne Blackwell, who congratulated Maxwell and Veronica on raising an unprecedented sum for their foundation. She also made a cheeky remark that hinted at more expansions and surprises for the Harrington Family Foundation, her ambiguous words causing some in the crowd to exchange knowing looks. The entire room erupted in a standing ovation, with Maxwell and Veronica at the center of the attention. Veronica mustered a gracious smile, stepping onto the stage beside Maxwell for a final wave to the crowd. In that moment, they looked like the philanthropic power couple everyone believed them to be: united, unstoppable, and deeply in love. Only those closest to the situation could see the hairline fractures threatening to split that picture-perfect facade. Lena, standing at a distance, felt the surge of applause envelop her as well. She clapped politely but inwardly wrestled with what the future held. If Maxwell truly wanted to remain with Veronica, what would become of her? After the applause died down, people began trickling out of the ballroom, sated by the extravagant evening. The staff moved with organized precision, clearing tables, stacking chairs, and ushering leftover goodies toward the catering trucks. A few important guests lingered for final photographs and last-minute networking. Lena took the opportunity to slip away without drawing attention. She retreated to the hallway near the coat check, retrieving her wrap. Her heart thundered as she considered her next step. A part of her wanted closure with Maxwell, but she also suspected that any conversation now would only deepen the rift. She cast one last glance at the ballroom entrance, half hoping Maxwell would appear, conflicted about whether she should stay or go, but Maxwell was nowhere in sight. He was, perhaps rightly, attending to Veronica, so Lena left, stepping into a taxi and disappearing into the damp night. Meanwhile, Veronica thanked the last of the guests, her face set in a polite mask while an internal storm raged within her. Maxwell stood off to the side, shaking hands with a few well-wishers. When the final donor departed, the event staff nodded their goodnights. Only a few top-level organizers remained, packing up documents and equipment. Without exchanging more than a few words, Veronica and Maxwell found themselves in the lobby. The opulent decor now seemed suffocating. She turned to him, arms crossed protectively over her stomach. "Bernard is waiting with the car. I'm going back to the penthouse." Her tone was even, but it brokered no argument. Maxwell nodded silently. "I'll join you. We need to talk." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "Let me be clear. We'll talk if and when I'm ready. Tonight, the first needs space." In the silence that followed, Maxwell understood the unspoken meaning. He could share the limousine with her if he wanted, but emotional distance was already dividing them. They exited the hotel together, a hush descending as they slid into the car that would take them home, though home would never feel quite the same again. The ride back to the Harrington penthouse was riddled with tension. Veronica gazed out the window, stroking her baby bump, while Maxwell sat in rigid silence. Neither dared to speak, partly from exhaustion, partly from fear of igniting a heated argument that Bernard, the driver, would inadvertently overhear. The city lights blurred into streaks against the rain-soaked glass, each droplet symbolizing the tears Veronica refused to shed in public. At the penthouse, Veronica walked directly to the master bedroom, shutting the door behind her. Maxwell lingered in the foyer, removing his coat and tie. The quiet was suffocating. Finally, he sank into a leather armchair in the living area, burying his face in his hands. The night had been a spectacle of success for their foundation, but a disaster for their marriage. And he knew the hardest part, the reckoning, was still ahead. Veronica, alone in the bedroom, carefully unzipped her Elisab gown, placing it over a padded hanger. In her satin slip, she stood before the full-length mirror. Her belly protruded softly, carrying new life that deserved nothing but love and security. The swirling thoughts in her mind wouldn't let her rest. Could she forgive Maxwell? Would he even want her to? A tear slipped down her cheek, and then another. Before she knew it, she was quietly sobbing, muffling the sounds so as not to alert him. She remembered the day she had learned she was pregnant. Maxwell had spun her around in the kitchen, overjoyed at the prospect of a little Harrington heir. Was that joy merely superficial? Had his feelings already drifted? The dissonance between those happy memories and tonight's betrayal felt crushing. Eventually, Veronica pulled herself together. She slipped into a comfortable robe and let her hair down. Making her way to the living area, she found Maxwell nursing a whiskey. He looked up, eyes filled with guilt. "Veronica," he began, his voice hoarse. She waved him silent. "Let's just talk this through calmly. I can't go to bed without addressing this." She took a seat on the sofa across from him, maintaining a cautious distance. Maxwell set his glass on the coffee table. "I never wanted to hurt you. You know, we drifted apart over the last year. You became so focused on preparing for the baby, and I didn't know how to handle that change. Lena came along, and she was exciting, new. We shared ideas. It felt like a spark, but I never planned to throw it in your face like this." Veronica closed her eyes, forcing a steady breath. "You chose to let her appear at the event tonight, Maxwell. That was deliberate. You introduced her to everyone. That's not an accident or a small fling. That's you publicly acknowledging her." She paused, voice trembling. "Don't you see how that humiliates me? How it jeopardizes the future of our child to have their father embroiled in a scandal?" Maxwell raked a hand through his hair. "I know. I thought, foolishly, that we could blend these worlds. That maybe you wouldn't mind, or that you'd see it's just business. It was naive." He looked down, voice breaking. "I never stopped caring about you, Veronica. You have to believe that." Veronica's eyes filled again, though she blinked back the tears. "Caring about someone isn't enough if your actions show otherwise. I'm carrying our child, Maxwell, and I need to know whether we have a future together. Do you even want to save our marriage?" He leaned forward, anguish etched into every line of his face. "Yes, I do. I was stupid, selfish. I got caught up in something that wasn't real compared to what we have." Veronica studied him, remembering the man she married. "Then it ends with Lena, completely. No more contact, no more illusions." Maxwell nodded, a single tear escaping down his cheek. "I'll end it." Veronica swallowed hard, her heart aching. "We need counseling, a chance to rebuild trust. If we can't do that, I won't stay in a sham marriage for appearances, especially not with a child involved." He nodded again, his expression of remorse unwavering. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The night wore on as they mapped out the barest skeleton of a plan to salvage what remained of their partnership. Neither slept peacefully. In the following days, Maxwell made good on his promise to end the relationship with Lena. He called her, explaining through a strained voice that while he cared for her deeply, his priority was now to rebuild his marriage for the sake of his wife and unborn child. Lena listened in stoic silence, tears streaming silently. She had expected this, but the finality stung. When Maxwell ended the call, she felt a hollow ache. Across town, Veronica agreed to schedule a session with a renowned couples therapist, Dr. Cassandra Ellis. Their first meeting was fraught with tension, each confession feeling like a fresh wound reopened. Veronica struggled to find forgiveness, while Maxwell wrestled with understanding how he had allowed his life to spiral so far out of control. The media, for their part, continued to speculate, but found no official confirmation. Most rumors fizzled, overshadowed by the success of the gala's record-breaking funds. A handful of tabloids ran blurry images of Maxwell and the mysterious woman in red, but none could definitively pin down the story. As weeks passed, Veronica and Maxwell inched toward a fragile reconciliation. Therapy forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about their communication breakdowns, their unmet needs, and the illusions they had clung to. Maxwell severed all business ties with Lena, relinquishing the potential expansions in European arts programs. For him, the cost of losing Veronica and their child was far too high to risk. Veronica, for her part, made clear the boundaries that needed to be respected moving forward. She insisted on complete transparency, phone records, business meetings, finances. Maxwell agreed, feeling the pang of lost freedom, but realizing this was the price for rebuilding trust. Privately, Veronica was still haunted by the memory of that night. She pictured Maxwell standing proudly with Lena, presenting her like a prized gem. Part of her questioned if she could truly move on. Yet each time she felt her baby kick, she reminded herself why she was fighting to save her marriage. Miles away, in a modest apartment she had rented, Lena tried to rebuild her life. Her gallery work kept her busy, and in quieter moments she grieved the life she had almost believed was possible, one where Maxwell might truly choose her. The heartbreak was compounded by guilt. She had never intended to come between a pregnant woman and her husband. She considered returning to Florence for a fresh start, but for now decided to remain in the city. Perhaps, she thought, she could still do good through her art initiatives, even if her personal relationship with Maxwell was over. Whenever she passed the Platinum Crown Hotel, she couldn't help but look at it and remember that fateful night. The grand staircase, the flamboyant applause, the excruciating tension. She would forever be associated with the scandal in her own mind, even if the world eventually forgot. As the due date for Veronica's baby approached, Maxwell became a different man. He attended every prenatal appointment, held Veronica's hand during ultrasounds, and even took parenting classes, eager to show he was committed. Late at night, they would sit quietly in the penthouse's living room, discussing names for their child. Those were the tender moments that gave Veronica hope that they could overcome the betrayal. Still, the question of forgiveness loomed. Could she truly forgive him for humiliating her, for risking their family's stability for the thrill of a side relationship? Each act of kindness from Maxwell felt like a step toward healing, but trust was a slow-growing plant, easily uprooted by doubt. The Harrington Family Foundation also saw transformations. Veronica stepped more assertively into leadership roles, ensuring her voice guided decisions. Maxwell, chastened by the near destruction of his personal life, showed less bravado and more genuine humility in philanthropic circles. Months later, in a private suite of the city's most prestigious hospital, Veronica went into labor. Maxwell stayed by her side, clutching her hand and whispering words of encouragement. The hours were long and painful, but when their baby girl finally arrived, the tears that streamed down both their faces carried a mix of relief, joy, and redemption. Holding that tiny life in their arms, they felt an unspoken pact, renewed to safeguard each other and their child from future harm. In the hallway, far from the Harrington family's intimate moment, a nurse passed by a newsstand where a magazine cover declared, "Harrington's welcome baby," amid rumored scandal. Veronica and Maxwell wouldn't see that headline until much later, and by then it wouldn't matter as much. They had chosen each other, flaws and all, to build a family that could outlast any rumor. Of course, the road to recovery was far from over. Veronica harbored scars that would take time to fade. Maxwell carried guilt he might never fully shed. But for now, they held their daughter, grateful for a chance to start anew. The Harrington story is a reminder that even in the world of glittering wealth and flawless appearances, raw humanity lurks beneath every polished surface. Maxwell's misguided choice to flaunt another relationship at a grand charity event could have dismantled his marriage and tarnished the very foundation meant to uplift others. Yet, Veronica's inner strength, anchored by the life growing inside her, became the driving force that pulled them back from the edge. Their journey through deception, heartbreak, and tentatively renewed commitment illustrates how fragile trust can be and how painstaking it is to rebuild once shattered. If you found this story gripping the glamour, the heartbreak, and the unforeseen twists, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll join us in exploring more dramatic tales that uncover the hidden truth behind closed doors. Stay tuned for our next riveting story, coming soon.